done some things to kind of increase the talent pool in the secondary group, but how much does adding talent up front on that defensive line help you guys?
That's the one thing that really, if you look around the league, there's not a lot of teams in this league that have really good defensive linemen. Okay? So defensively, you don't have anybody in the top 10 or the top, there's a lot of good defensive linemen in the SEC. There's a lot of good defensive linemen in the Pac. You don't see a lot of defensive linemen coming out of this league because it's hard to get them because of the style of offense. And you get a pretty good group like ours, and that's a real advantage. And I think getting the depth there is extremely important because it's so fast that you have to use two groups. You can't just go with 4 defensive linemen or 3 defensive linemen or whatever you're going to do. You got to rotate because it's hot and it's going fast. And those big boys don't get quite as much. It's a little tougher for them when it's that tempo. So we feel like we have a little bit of an advantage there, and it's important.
I know you hit on this a little earlier, but a guy like Cassius Sendis, he really kind of came into this program and just put a stamp on it right away. How often have you seen a guy like that, this new to a program, take that kind of step that quickly?
Well, I think the thing that separates him from some, I've seen. Look, when I was in college football the first time going, we used a lot of JC guys. At Boise State, Weber State, Washington State, we recruited a lot of junior college players. And the general rule with those junior college players is that it takes them a little while to get going. Now, that's one of the reasons that we kind of changed our style so that we could be on top of the guys more on the technical aspects and someone that they can hang their hat on as a coach, get their trust and teach them what they need to do so they progress faster. The thing that separates Sendish would have come in here just like all these other guys, a lot of pretty good athletes. Sendish is smart, and that helps him a ton because now all of a sudden he's not just using his athletic ability and trying to catch up with the Division I game. He's using his mental and his athletic ability to be able to do that. So he has that advantage. He's been able to come in and we can say, well, we can use him in about 3 different positions and still feel pretty good about it because he can handle it.
It's kind of an unfair question, but is there anybody over your career that kind of reminds you of what he's able to do, being able to have that kind of versatility and move around and add in that kind of mental ability as well?
The one that I can say the best one for that was Darren Woodson with the Cowboys, because Darren Woodson was a safety that when we went to nickel, he was the nickel back. Well, to be able to do that, that's 2 different positions, except the safety and the nickel see the same patterns.
Right.
They're reading patterns. The safeties and the nickel are seeing, this guy goes here, this guy's probably going to come here. These guys go here, there's probably a guy coming here. It's a comparable position, but physically it's 2 different things. Okay. Well, Cassius is a corner that brings some punch. So if he goes to safety, he can play safety and be involved in the running game. He's a corner. In this game, the nickel is not just a pass defender. He's like another linebacker. So he's got to be able to play the run as well. Now, there's not as much power game, so you don't need the big physical safety there. But you need a guy that will hit and stick his nose in there and get involved. So his deal is that he has those attributes, and Woodson was the same way. Woodson was smart enough to play and physical enough to play safety, but then on 3rd down he was athletic enough and fast enough to come up and play the nickel position. So he's probably the closest that I've seen to being able to do that. But all of our nickels in Dallas were kind of that way. They were guys that were physical, but they were athletic. And so if you had to put them somewhere else, they could do it. Skandrick, that's there now, that plays nickel for Dallas, could start at corner probably. But it's such a big position with all the open sets that he ends up playing more nickel than he does corner.
Coach, a lot of returning faces, but also a lot of new faces. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between where you were at this time last year with this defensive line and where you're at right now?
We definitely have a whole lot more numbers to work with this year than we did a year ago. It was was a little slim pickings a year ago. Now we have a lot of competition, a lot of numbers. Like you stated, there's a good nucleus of guys that are returning that have really, to me, improved on their stamina, on their conditioning, and on their skills. So I'm really excited about those guys. And then the new guys that are coming in, obviously you see a lot of athletic ability, a lot of potential there, you know, because of their physical attributes and their physical skills. You know, so it's an exciting time. I'm a lot more fired up this time, this year than I was a year ago.
Does that make your job easier, having that many different guys with that many different variable skill sets that you kind of mix and match and move around? I mean, how much does that change what you're able to do?
Oh, it definitely makes up my job a little easier. It makes us better as a defensive line. It makes us better as a defense, and eventually, obviously, it's going to make us better as a football team. You know, it's good to have guys that can do a lot of different things, you know, because now you're more versatile. And also, God forbid, if somebody gets hurt, you got some guys you can move around that will be able to help you.
You guys lost a couple guys that were expected to be some top-tier pass rushers from this defense. With what you got left now, who out of this group can get after the passer and really put pressure on that quarterback?
Well, you know, I think interiorly, you know, some of the returning guys have improved that skill. They worked real hard with Hosopo this summer. We worked hard on it in the spring to try to develop an inside pass rush. So, I like Keon Styles. I like Kiba inside-wise on their pass rush. I think Marquell has some interior pass rush skills. KY, he's healthy now and he's moving around pretty good, so I like his explosion. Kevin Young, that is. And then, off the edge, we have Ben Goodman and Michael Reynolds are the guys that's going to have to give us the speed rush off the edge.
How is Michael? I mean, we've seen him at times just be explosive, just getting after the quarterback without much ability to be able to stop him at times. We've seen it in the spring game, but just don't see a consistency. How is he coming along with his consistency on the practice field?
Oh, I think Mike, has really had a good camp so far. He's been a lot more consistent this year, and like you said, you've always seen bits and pieces of Mike's skills, and like I said, we just hope that he would do it more often than he's done it. And I think he understands that he don't have a whole lot of time left. He got a few more years left, and I think it is a lot more. He's a lot more serious about his game this year than he had been in the past.
Some of the personalities on this defensive line that have been added. I mean, how much different, like guys like Ty and guys like Markell, how much do they add in terms of just every day in practice and bringing that kind of attitude and that kind of upbeat? I've hear those guys like to talk a lot too. I mean, how different is it having guys like that in the group?
I like it. I think it's always good when you got guys that's going, keep the meeting upbeat and keep it lively. It makes it fun. It's not just going through the motions. So, I think, they kind of feed off of one another. It get kind of, I got to settle them down every now and then because it can get out of hand a little bit if you don't keep a thumb on them. But Marquell has a great character and charisma. Ty, he's always talking. And, sometimes I tell him, you just open your mouth and just whatever comes out comes out. You don't even think about it half the time. But it's fun, and then you got guys like Bolton. Bolton, he's kind of quiet when he's around a lot of people, but when he's in our group, he fits right in with the rest of them. So that part's good.
I wanted to ask you about Andrew. He's a guy that put up some really good numbers in JUCO a couple years ago. He kind of hurt and kind of was been out of it for a while. How's he transitioning to this point? I know it's still early in practice.
Yeah, it's still early, and he's still rusty because he hadn't played football in a long time. But what you do see is a big kid that has a lot of athletic ability, and he's still working off some of the rust out of his game. But I'm excited to see what he can do.
All right, I know you were around during the spring, but new role this year and really getting into camp, got your full group. What's it like for you right now and kind of transitioning into your new role? And how's it kind of different than where you were at last year? I know you were still around last year doing a lot of different things, but kind of what's some of the differences in your title this year?
Well, this year, obviously, my role is much more involved with the football aspect of it, and that's obviously what I've been working towards and attempted to do for a while. So it's really refreshing. It's very exciting for me. I think, to be honest, I'm probably the most excited of any of the coaches, and to get it in and mix up with the DBs and go through the drills. I mean, it's a grind in August, but this is why you do it. And to see the guys develop, it's really fulfilling because, as we always say, we're all in this together. And that Coach Campo and Coach Al, we live through those players on the field. And every time they make a play, it's like I'm getting my hands on the ball. So it is a heck of a feeling, and I'm honored and love it. I really love it.
Looking from it from the outside, I mean, just kind of looking down your group, you got a lot of guys that have been on offense, got different places on defense, all over the ball. Does that make it kind of difficult for, your first year in this role and having all these different inexperienced pieces? A lot of talent, but inexperienced.
It's a hodgepodge at times, and we're going to find a way to put the most productive players in the field, assuming that they take care of their business in the community and in the classroom. But I really feel good about the competition we have, and when you're in, whether you're a second team or third team, you're a starter when you're in. The standard is the same. We say, hey, we don't want to be good or great or settle for excellence. We want to do it better than anyone ever imagined it could be done. And I know we lost 4 starters, but guys like Dexter Linton who have been here, guys like Cassius who have a rare maturity, Alex Matlock's been here, Tevin Shaw's a year better in the system, Isaiah Johnson's a great young guy, a lot of talent, Brian Mora, Deron Dangerfield, they all have a chance to contribute in their own way to our team. I feel good about the depth at safety right now.
Can you talk a little bit about Cassius? I mean, he's a guy that, they got the junior college new transfers coming in tomorrow to talk to us, but he was a guy that's been out there front and center from the beginning. He was in here talking. I mean, how's a guy make that kind of ascension that fast?
It's rare. I've never seen it, and with any program I've been a part of. The thing, when people don't pan out as players, it's rarely because of a lack of athleticism. It's always a lack of mental and emotional maturity, and Cassius has that in spades. The guy is all in all the time. He's a very serious young man, and he has the maturity of a 35-year-old guy. And he studies, he's smart, he's instinctual. He has every intangible factor you can want in a football player.
What do you guys push as the identity of this group? I mean, what are you guys pushing every day? I mean, you heard some of the other guys talking about just swarming to the ball, getting, being quick and fast.
Absolutely. The thing is, it all starts with effort and knowledge, and the effort part comes before the knowledge. But we have to be a defense that overachieves, and as a team, that's our goal. And if you run to the ball, it is you never. We always say you don't know what's going to happen the next moment. One moment from now, you don't know what I'm even going to say. That run to the ball. Maybe the offensive player, maybe somebody punches the ball. Maybe we pick it up. That we need to create more turnovers. We need to create a mindset, a belief system that you have to run the ball. Like if you have to make the tackle or it'll be a touchdown. Every person, they have to run the ball like their tackle is the game-saving tackle. And then the knowledge that we have a saying, our attention to detail is going to set us apart. And, studying the game, the difference between a confused football player and a bad football player is nothing. They look exactly the same. So a confused football player may be really talented, but he doesn't know what he's doing. If you don't know what you're doing, you hesitate. It's got to be automatic. It's got to be automatic.
All right, the other day in Coach Weiss's press conference, he kind of talked about the changes on defense, how most of the coaches were going to be on the field, and a big important key cog in that is going to be you, and you kind of being the liaison between the different positions. Can you talk a little bit about your new role this year, and obviously linebacker title, but everything else that kind of comes along with that?
Yeah, as we discussed, the best way to, with Coach Weiss in the offseason, the best way to make some changes on defense and become more efficient on game day with the things that we're seeing offensively. We all kind of collectively came up with this idea that being in the middle of it as a linebacker coach, being in charge of the fronts and the coverages, and Coach, put that emphasis on me to put those things together. Coach Wyatt kind of working on more of the pressure ideas and that. And then, Coach Campo being on the back end of the coverage, and then, me tying it all together in the middle. With being a linebacker coach and working with both things, and then, my being there and my background in the league, talking about, calling things and making the decisions on that part of it. So it's, it's what I've done in the past, and we're fortunate to have a great bunch of coaches, a lot of veteran coaches that have had, these roles in the past. So it allows us to get right with our kids immediately when they come off the field and make adjustments and work together.
Well, last year you had working with a lot of new young pieces, a lot of unknowns, and still a lot of unknowns this year, but a significantly thicker talent pool and depth chart. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between where your group's at? Obviously, you went to linebackers coach last year, but you're very familiar with those guys. How much farther along are they this year, maybe last year?
Well, I think, quite a bit. You think about the experience that Jake Love and Ben Heaney, Ben Goodman, all those guys got in games a year ago. They know what to expect when they go out there now. There's none of the bright lights or any of that with them. Adding the newcomers in, those JC kids like Sampson, who are junior college guys, they're not kids. I mean, they've been through the times a little bit. To me, it's just a more veteran feel about the group. They know how to show up, they know how to work, they know the expectations more, and they're smarter about football. They know situations better, they understand their assignments better, and so all that. So I think that instead of where you're teaching them what things are, you're kind of teaching them a lot more of how exactly are we going to do this, and getting down to a lot more fine tuning than explaining bigger issues.
You can talk a bit about, as far as practice goes, which groups you're working with these nickels and the bucks. I mean, a lot of different guys moving around, playing different roles and with different units. Can you talk a little bit about who you work with specifically and how that kind of goes in practice, where those guys kind of go between the buck and the nickel guys?
Yeah, it is different. The Mike and the Will are, technically Mike, Will, Sam, and the buck are all with me in that buck positions now. More of a linebacker type deal. So they come with me, and then we have to find certain times that they go and work with Coach Wyatt for different, pass rush or do different things like that. The nickel Sam position is, kind of split between me and the DB coaches. So, just when there's a different emphasis that a kid needs that day, he kind of heads to that group. But for the most part, they meet in my room, and we go through it because we're the ones that are working together in the middle.
Can you talk a little bit about the battle between Samson Fafili and Jake Love, and kind of where that's going, and where you anticipate? I mean, those are two guys that you'd probably like to get on the field at the same time, but playing the same position right now. Can you talk a little bit about where they're at right now and kind of where you hope they're going to end up in the future?
Yeah, you're right. They're both good football players. They're both more than capable of doing what we need them to do in Big 12 football, and we're fortunate to have both of them because that competition and the depth and their versatility is going to help us. One of them's going to eventually be the starter, and one of them will be the backup. But no matter what, they're guys that can contribute on this team. They've earned that role, and they're good enough to do that. So regardless of how that depth chart plays out, we'll end up, those guys are both going to contribute heavy to what we do.
What about Samson? I mean, we all saw yesterday him out there leading that chant yesterday. That was a pretty cool thing. I mean, have you seen a player like that come in? I mean, he hasn't been here that long. I mean, make that kind of, he got juiced up. And did you guys feel that in practice after you see that? I mean, what kind of role has he played in just his presence being around now?
Yeah, he's a fun guy to be around. He shows up every day and got a smile on his face and has energy, and he's not afraid to talk. He's not, those type of things aren't an issue with him. He's that's what he is. He's one of those personalities that is outgoing and has some stuff about him that makes it fun to be around. So.
Do you need guys like that on defense? That's kind of outspoken guy. I'm sure. I was talking to Buddy about having guys like Ty and Markel. He said sometimes he has to put the kibosh on it. But a guy like that, I mean, you haven't had a lot of that in the linebacker, especially.
No,
you need those guys.
Oh yeah, you absolutely need them. I mean, the bottom line, especially like you take a fall camp. There's a little bit of monotony to it. It's the same schedule. It's the grind. It's all that. And so when you have them guys that show up and they're able to lift the person next to them up a little bit and bring some light to situations, it makes everybody, pick up their energy level, and that's what you got to keep going.